The capture asterisk, the war between humans and the Zalthari Empire, had reached its final stage. It was not just a battle for land or resources anymore. It had become a fight to prove who deserved to survive, humans or aliens. Commander Rain was one of the bravest soldiers in Earth's army. He had led many successful missions. But this time, things went wrong. His team was sent deep into alien territory. Their goal was to destroy a communication tower of the Zalthari. But the aliens were ready. It was a trap. Rain and his team were surrounded by giant alien soldiers. The Zalthari were tall, powerful, and emotionless. Their skin was silver gray. Their eyes glowed red. Their queen was feared by all. She ruled with both mind and force. Rain fought hard. He tried to save his team, but one by one, they fell. In the end, Rain was the only one alive, and he was captured. He woke up inside a cold, dark cell. The walls were made of metal. The air was dry. He could hear strange alien sounds outside. His arms were tied to a steel chair. A soft blue light shone from above that the door opened. 2 alien guards entered, followed by someone taller. Much taller. Her feet made a loud, heavy sound as she walked in. She was the queen. She was over 9 feet tall, her skin glowing slightly in the dark. She wore armor made of black crystal. Her long arms moved with grace. Her eyes were green, and they studied Rain like he was a strange animal. So, she said in a calm, deep voice, "This is what humans send to fight me." Rain looked at her without fear. "And who are you?" "Some overgrown space witch." The queen laughed. It was loud and sharp. "You humans are weak. Your minds are slow. Your bodies are soft. Even your way of reproduction. Slow and emotional," she said. "Our kind do not need such weakness." Rain narrowed his eyes. "Yet here I am, alive, still not afraid." The queen walked around him slowly. "We captured your DNA, body, your thoughts. And now, we will learn." Rain's heart beat faster. "Learn what?" She leaned closer. "What makes you human?" He felt a small sting on his neck. Before he could speak, his vision blurred. Everything went black again. When he woke up, he was in a strange room. There were machines all around. He was not tied, but he was still a prisoner. A soft humming sound filled the space. Screens showed his heartbeat, brainwaves, and other strange symbols. Alien scientists watched from behind a glass wall. Some took notes. Some just stared. Then she entered again. "The queen, you are different," she said. "You have fear, but you fight it. You have pain, but you keep going." Rain sat up. "We call that being human." The queen smiled slightly. "I wonder what happens when such a thing is mixed with us." Rain frowned. "What do you mean?" She held up a vial. Inside was a glowing liquid. "This contains your DNA. We have studied it. I will test it on myself." Rain's eyes widened. "What? You're insane." She laughed again. "No. I'm curious. I want to prove that your kind is useless. That even if we try to mix, your weak biology will fail. But why risk yourself?" Rain asked. The queen looked away for a second, then said, "Because I must know." Later that night, alarms rang through the alien ship. Loud beeps echoed across the halls. The lights turned red. Guards rushed down the halls. Scientists shouted in panic. Something had gone wrong. Inside her private chamber, the queen was on the floor, breathing heavily. Her body was glowing. Her skin shimmered with strange patterns. She cried out, holding her stomach. Her voice was loud and full of pain. One scientist shouted, "It's not rejecting the DNA. It's merging." Another gasped, "Impossible. This shouldn't happen." Back in his cell, Rain heard the noise. A guard came in, pointed a weapon at him, and said, "You, come with me." Rain was taken through the halls. He saw aliens running in fear. Something was happening, something big. The guard pushed him into a lab room. The queen was there, sitting weakly on a chair. Her eyes were different, softer. She looked at Rain and said something he never expected. "You are now part of something, unique." Rain stood frozen. He didn't know what she meant, but deep inside, he felt something terrifying was about to begin. The air inside the alien ship felt heavier than before. And everything had changed since the queen's decision to use human DNA on herself. And though she mocked human biology, something inside her had begun to shift in a way no one expected. Not even her commander Rain was still in the observation room, watched by alien guards and scientists. His hands no longer tied, but his freedom still taken. His mind racing with questions that had no answers. The queen had spoken the strange words to him earlier. telling him he was part of something unique. And though Rain tried to understand, the truth was far beyond his guess. He had seen her eyes, once cold and full of pride, now carrying something new, something closer to emotion outside his room. The halls echoed with quiet whispers in the alien tongue, and the mood was no longer one of confidence. Now it was for Rain was taken again, through the shining metal halls, escorted by 2 armed guards, until they reached a new lab, where bright green lights blinked from machines he couldn't name there. Behind a glass wall lay the Queen, hooked to alien devices, her chest rising slowly, her body glowing from within, as if holding a hidden storm. Scientists spoke in low voices. And though Rain couldn't understand every word, he caught fragments through a translator attached to his collar. Unstable reaction, one said, but no rejection yet, said another. They were shocked, confused, and scared. Rain was brought into a smaller room beside the lab. This one, quieter, and inside was a creature not like the others. Volek, a young alien scientist with blue skin and a softer tone than the rest, stood near a console, his eyes glowing faintly as he studied data on a transparent screen. You are different, Volek said to Rain, not like your soldiers. You think before you fight. Rain raised his brow, unsure if that was an insult or a compliment. But before he could respond, Volek continued. The Queen thought she could break your DNA down, prove human life is weak. But something unexpected happened. Your cells didn't fail. They adapted. Rain leaned forward, voice steady but sharp. What are you saying? Volek turned the screen around, and on it was a living form. Small, growing fast, its shape unclear. Part alien and part human, pulsing with light. The DNA merged, Volek said. Your cells and hers are now one, and what is growing inside her is not just a mix. It's something new. Rain stared at the image, heart pounding in silence, trying to accept the impossible. She's pregnant, Volek said. And we don't know what it will become. Rain took a step back, his thoughts crashing like waves. The idea was too strange, too fast, too unreal. Why are you telling me this? He asked. What do you want from me? Volek looked around and lowered his voice. Not all of us agree with what the Queen did. Some of us believe this child could be dangerous. Others think it could save us. Rain's eyes narrowed. Save you from what? Volek paused, then said. Our kind is dying slowly. We have lost the ability to feel, to evolve. Our strength remains, but our spirit fades. We have power, but no purpose. Rain looked again at the image, and something inside him shifted. A strange feeling, not anger, not fear, but curiosity, and maybe a little hope. The Queen had risked everything to prove her superiority, but in doing so, she had started a change no one could stop. Suddenly alarms rang through the ship again, this time louder and faster. Red lights flashed in the corners, and the ground shook under their feet. A voice called through the speaker. Emergency in the incubation chamber. Energy spike detected. Volek's face turned pale. The hybrid is reacting. They ran back into the main lab, where the Queen now floated in a tank filled with blue liquid, her body still glowing, her hands pressed to her stomach, and her mouth open in silent cry. Machines beeped faster. One screen showed a strange pulse coming from inside her, not like a heartbeat, but something stronger, wider, reaching through the ship like invisible waves. Rain stepped forward, watching her face, no longer proud, no longer cruel, but almost afraid. The Queen's eyes met his for a moment, and in that look, Rain saw something truly shocking. She was asking for help. Volek rushed to the controls, trying to slow the reaction. But nothing worked. The energy readings rose higher, the temperature of the room spiked, and the other scientists shouted warnings. Contain it. One screamed, shut down the system. Another yelled, but nothing stopped it. The child inside was no longer just growing. It was thinking. It was reaching out. Rain felt a sudden pressure in his head, like someone whispering inside his mind. He stumbled back, holding his temples, and the whisper turned into a voice. Not alien, not human, but both. We are not. Mistake, it said. We are becoming the light. Inside the Queen grew so bright the walls shook. Volek pulled Rain away as the tank cracked in. In that moment, Rain knew everything had changed forever. Silence filled the alien ship after the explosion of light and energy. From the Queen's chamber, as if time had stopped and no one dared to breathe or speak, and the strange calm was heavier than fear itself. Commander Rain sat in a corner of the observation room, still shaking slightly from what he had felt earlier, not from pain but from something deeper, the voice in his mind. The message from the child that had not yet been born but was already thinking and reaching out. Volek, the alien scientist, paced slowly across the room, his long fingers moving through data streams on a holographic screen. His face was calm, but his glowing eyes flickered with nervous light. He finally turned to Rain and spoke. "The queen lives," he said, "but something is different now more than before. Her body is not only carrying the hybrid, it is becoming something new." Rain stood up, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on Volek, and he asked, "What do you mean?" "Something new." Volek hesitated, then answered, "The queen's cells are changing faster than we thought, and her thoughts, her emotions are no longer like ours. She sees memories that do not belong to her, and she feels things no Zalthari has felt in thousands of years." Rain walked to the screen, showing the queen resting inside a new medical pod, her body glowing softly, her breathing steady, her hands resting on her stomach, where the hybrid grew stronger with every second. "She dreams," Volek said quietly. "Her mind touches earth places. She has never seen voices she has never heard. She dreams of rain, of sunlight, of a child laughing, of a human life she never lived." But Rain looked closer at her face, once so proud, now almost peaceful, and something in his heart shifted again. Not fear, not hate, but something close to understanding. Suddenly the lights in the lab dimmed, and the screen blinked once, then showed a pulse from inside the queen. Not just a heartbeat, but a pattern, almost like music. Volek stepped back, shocked. "This is not possible," he whispered. "It is communicating again, but not with words. This time it is sharing feelings, memories, emotions, all at once." Rain held his head again. The same pressure, the same wave of thought flooded him, and he saw images flash through his mind: a forest, a fire, a child standing under the stars, reaching out with both hands. He gasped, stepping back as the image faded, and looked at Volek. "This thing, this hybrid, it is not just alive, it is aware and it is learning." Fast. Volek nodded. "We created something that does not belong to either of us, and yet it carries both of us. It is not a child of war, it is a child of chance, and maybe a child of change." Suddenly, alarms bled again, this time louder, deeper, warning of internal motion. Something had shifted inside the queen's chamber, and guards rushed in, but Volek raised a hand. "Do not go in," he said. "We do not know what it will do. The hybrid is protecting itself." And the queen. Rain stepped toward the glass wall, watching the queen rise slowly from her pod, her eyes open now, glowing blue and green, mixed like the earth and stars together. She looked stronger and softer, at the same time her hand moving in slow motion across the surface of the glass. She spoke for the first time since the change, her voice, softer now, filled with something new. "He grows," she said, "and he is not like you, and not like me, but something between, and something beyond." The scientists whispered in shock. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons, but Volek held them back, saying, "Wait, she is not hostile, not yet." Rain stepped forward, his hand on the glass, mirroring hers, and said, "Why did you do this? Why risk yourself for a child you once called weak?" The queen blinked slowly, then answered, "Because I was wrong. I believed power meant strength, but your kind has something different, something deeper, something I could not understand." Until Noreen felt a wave of warmth pass through the glass, through his hand into his chest, a feeling of connection, not just to her, but to the life growing inside her. He turned to Volek and said, "This is not just science, this is something more." Volek nodded and said, "But not everyone will see it that way. The council will call for destruction. They fear what they do not control outside the lab." The ship trembled as new orders came from the High Council: destroy the queen and the hybrid before they become a threat, before they change this reign. And Volek looked at each other, both understanding. "What must be done? We have to move her," Rain said. "We have to protect the child." Volek agreed. "I will call those who still believe in peace. There are not many, but enough to try." They moved quickly, disabling cameras, opening secret paths, guiding the queen through shadowed halls, her steps heavy but steady, her strength returning with every movement inside. Heard the hybrid pulsed with light, guiding them, pulling them toward safety, toward something unknown. They reached the escape chamber. The queen turned back one last time, looking at the place that had been her prison and her throne, and whispered, "I mocked your kind, but now I carry its future." Rain touched the console as the doors closed and engines powered up, and the stars ahead looked brighter than ever. The stars outside the window moved slowly as the escape vessel floated through the dark void of space, carrying the Queen, Commander Rain, and the unborn hybrid, whose presence now filled the ship with a strange warm energy that none of them could explain. Inside the ship, silence ruled except for the gentle hum of the engines and the occasional flicker of alien lights guiding their path through a quiet corner of the galaxy, away from the eyes of the Zelthari Council and their deadly orders. The queen sat in the center of the chamber, her hands gently resting on her stomach, her breathing slow, and her eyes closed as if she was listening to something no one else could hear. And in truth, she was. Commander Rain watched from across the room, his arms crossed, his eyes focused, but not angry, not afraid, only full of questions he could not yet ask, because even now, he did not know who or what was growing inside the Queen. Lex stood by the console, scanning vitals and watching data change faster than ever before, his face showing confusion. Mixed with awe, every reading was off the charts. Yet nothing was wrong. The hybrid was not sick, it was simply more alive than anything he had ever studied. Rain walked over slowly and asked, "What are you seeing?" And Valak replied, "The child is forming new brain pathways faster than we thought. It is not just growing, it is thinking, and not only that, it is feeling." Rain looked at the queen, her face calm, her body glowing faintly. And he asked, "Does she know?" And Valak nodded. "She knows and she feels it too. They are connected in ways we do not yet understand." The queen opened her eyes slowly and spoke in a voice softer than before, but still filled with weight and meaning. "He dreams," she said. "He dreams of a world with blue skies and green fields, a place where war does not live and fear cannot grow." Rain sat down across from her and asked, "How do you know they are dreams?" And she replied, "Because I see them too, and when I sleep, I feel what he feels when he is curious. I see stars when he is sad. I feel rain, and when he is afraid, I see your facering." Was silent for a moment, then said, "I did not choose this, but maybe I was chosen." And the queen nodded, saying, "Perhaps he needed something from both of us, something no one else could give." The ship suddenly shook, not from an attack, but from a pulse, a wave of energy coming from within the chamber itself, and Valak shouted, "It's the child again. He is sending signals we do not know where or why." The queen held her stomach tightly and said, "He is afraid something is coming, something he can sense before we can see it." And before anyone could respond, the ship's lights flickered and a message appeared on the screens. "All ferry warship detected closing distance. Prepare for boarding." Valak cursed under his breath, and Rain jumped to the console, asking, "How did they find us?" And Valak replied, "I do not know. Maybe the child reached too far. Maybe they tracked the energy." The queen stood slowly taller than both of them, and said then, "We fight not to win, but to protect what cannot be." Replace a drain loaded a weapon, handed one to Valak, and said, "We hold them here as long as we can." And the queen said, "No, I will face them. I am still their queen, and they will listen, or they will fall before they could argue." The ship shook again, this time harder, and the ceiling lights turned red. The Zilthari had arrived, and they were not here to talk. The queen stepped into the central hall, her body glowing brighter than ever, her presence commanding yet calm, her voice reaching deep into the ship's speakers as she said, "If you come for death, you will find it, but if you come to listen, there is still hope." The enemy did not respond with words, only weapons, and they breached the hull with fire and smoke, their soldiers pouring in like shadows, with red eyes and blades that hummed with cold. Enedrine and Valak fought hard, covering the queen as she moved toward the heart of the ship, where the child's energy was strongest, and where a choice had to be made. In the middle of the ship was a new chamber glowing with white light, and the queen entered alone, placing her hands on a crystal structure that pulsed with life. She whispered to the child inside, "He cannot protect you forever, but maybe you can protect yourself." The chamber reacted, the light growing hotter and wider, and a wave of sound blasted through the halls, knocking back every soldier in its path without killing, without hate, just a force of will, a message of no more. The attackers fell back, confused, dazed, unable to move as the queen stepped out again, her body weaker now, her breath slower, but her eyes proud and full of something new. Rain reached her side, catching her as she stumbled, and she smiled faintly, saying, "He is awake now, and he knows who he is." Valak helped them back to the control room, and as they looked out at the retreating enemy ships, Rain whispered, "What now?" And the queen replied, "Now he decides." Behind them the chamber glowed gently, and inside the hybrid floated in calm light, his tiny form surrounded by stars of his own making, and his eyes open for the very first time. The silence after the storm was not peace, it was the calm before something greater, something deeper than war, something that carried the weight of choice and the burden of new life. The queen lay resting in the healing chamber, her body recovering slowly, her strength returning in waves, while the hybrid within her pulsed with energy that no machine could fully measure, no scanner could explain, and no alien could control. Commander Rain stood beside the chamber, his hand resting on the glass, his eyes watching every movement, every glow, every flicker of light from within the queen's body, and he knew something was coming, something they could not run from. Valak worked fast, moving between consoles, speaking in short-coded messages to those few loyal to the queen, to those who believed this child was not a weapon, but a beginning. The Zalthari Council had made their decision. The queen was now declared broken, her name stripped from the records, her bloodline marked for deletion, and her ship tagged for total destruction. Rain read the broadcast as it appeared on the screen, words cold, and final orders given without pause, without feeling, without doubt, and he turned to Valak and said, "They will come in numbers, more than we can fight." Valak nodded and said, "We will not fight." Alone, not this time, not if the child reaches them first. The queen stirred slowly, opening her eyes, her breath shallow, but her voice steady, and she said, "He is ready now. He understands what must be done." Suddenly, the lights of the ship flickered and dimmed, and then a soft hum filled the air, a pulse of warmth, not fear, spreading from the center of the chamber where the hybrid floated now, free from the queen's body, wrapped in a cocoon of light, suspended in the air, without wires, without touch, without sound. Rain took a step forward and whispered, "Is he alive?" And the queen said, "More than alive, he is aware." The cocoon opened slowly, unfolding like petals of a flower, revealing the child not quite human, not quite Zalthari, but something in between. His skin, soft and silver, his eyes glowing with gentle blue and green, his heartbeat steady, his gaze calm. He looked at Rain not as a stranger, but as someone known, remembered, as if the bond was already there. And then he looked at the queen and smiled. Vow. Lex stared in awe, his voice shaking as he said, "He is projecting thoughts across space, across minds. I can feel him, I can hear him inside, across the stars." Alien minds stirred those once loyal to the council, paused those who had doubted. The queen now heard a new voice, not shouting, not commanding, but calling quietly. A message of unity, of peace, of hope. But not all minds listened, and the council sent their final fleet, a war force of hundreds of ships, dark and heavy, cutting through space like knives, drawn not to conquer but to erase. Vow. Lek warned, "The child has little time. If he cannot reach enough minds, the fleet will destroy us all." And Rain looked at the hybrid and asked, "Can you stop them?" Not with power, but with something more. The hybrid floated forward slowly and raised his small hand, his fingers glowing with soft light, and then he closed his eyes, and the entire ship began to vibrate, not from engines, not from weapons, but from thought itself. Images poured into the minds of those who watched: forests, oceans, stars, hands reaching through fire, a queen laying down her crown, a soldier lowering his gun, a child standing between two worlds, not to divide, but to heal. Some on the fleet screamed, others wept, some dropped their weapons, unable to remember why they held them, and some turned their ships away, unable to face what they now felt. But the council flagship pressed forward, its commander deaf to the message, blind to the light, locked in old fear and older hate, and he gave the final command: "Fire all weapons, destroy everything." The queen stood one last time, her body weak, but her will unshaken, and she said, "I will shield him with what life I have left. He must not be hurt." Madrine held her arm, trying to stop her, but she looked at him with peace in her eyes and said, "He is the future, and I am the past. Let me go with honor." Before she could step forward, the hybrid moved between them, his small body glowing brighter than any star, and he looked at her, then at Rain, and then at the sky, and he whispered and thought, "I will not let any more die." He raised both hands, and the light exploded, not in fire, not in destruction, but in silence, a wave that spread across the fleet, disabling weapons, melting hatred, slowing time for just a moment. Every ship stopped, every soldier paused, every mind fell quiet. And then the hybrid spoke again, not in voice, but in feeling, a message carried not by sound, but by truth. "We are not enemies, we are not broken, we are one life born from two hearts, and we must not fear what we do not understand." Council flagship powered down, its systems failed, its lights darkened, and the war ended, not with fire, but with a child's hand raised in peace. The queen fell to her knees, her strength gone, but her eyes full of tears, and Rain caught her before she hit the floor, and she smiled and said, "He chose the better path." Above them the hybrid floated higher, shining softly, and watching the stars turn once more in silence. The stars stood still, as if the galaxy itself paused to witness the moment when silence defeated violence, and when the smallest voice echoed louder than any weapon ever made. The hybrid child floated above the deck, his body glowing like a calm sun, his eyes open wide, filled with light and understanding, his mind gently reaching across the emptiness, touching both human and Zalthari hearts without judgment, without fear. Commander Rain stood in awe, watching the child hover between them, his hands still raised, his presence warm and strong, like a fire that does not burn but gives light to those who have forgotten the way. The queen lay in Rain's arms, breathing softly, her strength almost gone, but her heart steady, her eyes locked on the child who now stood for more than just life. He stood for something far older and far greater than anyone could name. Volak wiped tears from his strange blue eyes, whispering, "I never believed in miracles until now, and even now I struggle to understand what I see and what I feel, and yet I do not want to run from it." The hybrid turned his head and looked at Valak, his gaze soft like water, like wind, like the first morning light, and Valak heard him, not in words, but in something deeper, a voice made not from sound, but from memory. "Do not fear, change." The hybrid said in thought, "Do not fear what grows from pain, for it is in pain that strength is born, and in strength We choose whether to destroy or to heal. Far beyond the ship, the great fleet of the Zalthari stood silent, their weapons powered down. Their commanders unsure, their orders no longer clear, their purpose now questioned by every soldier who had once believed that silence was strength and that peace was weakness. One ship moved forward slowly, its captain older than most, his face scarred by war, his eyes filled with sorrow, and he sent a message, not of surrender, but of asking, "What are you?" he said through the screen, his voice shaking. "Who are you, to stop us without a single blade?" The hybrid stood still, then moved forward, his feet not touching the ground, his hands open, and the lights around him pulsed gently with each step. The question, and the answer. The hybrid said, "I am not your enemy, and not your savior. I am the future you tried to stop, and the peace you never knew you needed." The captain on the screen sat down slowly, and closed his eyes, and for the first time in his long life, he felt something strange and soft. He felt forgiven. Rain turned to the queen, and said, "He is more than we thought." And she smiled, though her breath was weak, and her skin pale. She smiled because she knew she had done one thing right, and that was enough. "He is the best of both of us," she said. "Not perfect, not finished, but truth." The ship's lights shifted from red to white, from alarm to calm, as the hybrid's light filled every hallway and touched every dark corner, and all who saw him felt the same thing. Hope. He walked through the halls where blood had once stained the walls, and fear had once ruled the air, and with each step, life returned. Plants grew from cracks, machines once dead lit up, children who had hidden now came forward, not crying but smiling. One of the lower decks, a small human child, came running barefoot, her face dirty, her eyes wide, and she stopped when she saw the hybrid and said, "Are you an angel?" The hybrid knelt and took her hand gently, and for a moment the ship grew silent again, and then laughter rang through the halls, soft and real, and full of something everyone had forgotten. Joy. Rain and Volek followed slowly, not to protect the hybrid, but to witness what he was becoming, what he already was, and the queen remained behind, watching from the screen, her voice speaking through the ship, softly. "He will not rule, he will guide, he will not command, he will teach, and in doing so he will change us without force, without control, only with truth outside." The window stars shifted paths, as if even the universe was bending slightly, making space for something new, something never written in any history book or legend. The hybrid walked to the center of the ship, raised his hands again, and the light pulsed, not with power, but with peace, and then he spoke once more. "This is not the end," he said. "This is the beginning, not of a new war, but of a new way, not of humans or Zalthari, but of something greater, of a world where fear does not decide who lives and who dies." The message traveled far beyond the ship, through systems and stars, through cities and ruins, across both Earth and the Zalthari homeworld, and those who heard it remembered it, not with ears but with hearts. And somewhere deep inside every listener a question was planted, not "What are we?" but "What could we become?" The queen smiled once more, her eyes closing for the last time, her voice fading with one final thought. "He is free." Rain stood still, hands folded, eyes full of tears, not from grief, but from something else, something that burned and healed at the same time. The birth of hope was not loud, not bright, not sudden. It was quiet and slow, like a breath, like dawn, like the first moment after the last war. And so the hybrid stood alone in the light, not a king, not a god, only a child who chose to become more and asked others to do the same. Years passed like whispers in space, and the memory of war slowly faded, like dust floating away under a soft wind, and in that time, something unexpected happened. Something no one had dared to believe was possible. The child once feared by two worlds had grown not into a ruler or a weapon, but into a bridge between stars. A voice between enemies, a teacher among the broken. The hybrid named himself Kale, not from either language, not human, not Zalthari, but a sound that meant light in motion, a name born from feeling, not designy. He lived not in castles or ships, but among people, walking freely across cities once divided by fear, sitting with children who knew only peace, and listening to voices that once spoke only in anger. Rain, now older with gray in his beard, walked beside Kale, often not as a protector, but as a friend, and when asked if he feared what Kale might become, he always answered the same way: "I do not fear the fire that warms, I fear the cold that forgets." Two remained by Kale's side, guiding science, teaching language, and opening minds he once believed could never change. And he often said to new students, "The future does not arrive, it awakens, and you must be ready to meet it." The Zalthari Council no longer ruled as before. Many of its members stepped down, not from defeat, but from understanding, for when Kale touched their minds, he did not speak of power. He spoke of pain, and how it could become something new, if given the chance. Earth to change slowly but surely, the nations that once fought for control now sent their young to learn in Kale's academy, a place without borders, without flags, only purpose and questions. And at the center of this new peace stood a statue, not of war, not of kings, but of the queen once feared, now honored, her tall form carved in crystal, her hand open and lifted, her eyes looking not at the ground but at the stars above below her feet. The words were written in 2 languages, and said she gave life to what she once mocked, and through that life we found ourselves. Kale often visited the statue in quiet hours, when no one was near, and he would sit beside it, not to mourn, but to listen, for he still carried her voice inside him, not as command, but as memory. He spoke to her without words, telling her of each step taken, each conflict calmed, each life saved, and he thanked her not for giving him power, but for giving him choice. One day, a group of young humans and Zalthari stood before him, asking, not about history, but about fear, and one child said, "How did you make them stop hating you?" Kale knelt and answered, "I did not make them stop. I helped them remember how to begin again, and that takes more time than war, more strength than anger, and more love than pride." The children nodded, some smiling, some thinking deeply, and one young girl reached out to touch his hand and asked, "Are you sad that you are different?" Kale looked at his hand, his skin still silver, his eyes still glowing, and he smiled gently, saying, "I am not less because I am different. I am more because I chose to be myself." In orbit above Earth, a new station was built, not for weapons or defense, but for learning and unity. It was called the Seedlight, and from there messages were sent across galaxies, carrying stories, lessons, songs, and dreams. And every message ended the same way, with Kale's voice soft and clear, saying, "We were made to fear what we do not understand, but we were born to grow." Beyond Ferain, sometimes sat alone by the great lake near the academy, his hands in the water, his eyes on the sky, remembering the first time he saw the queen, the first time he heard her laugh, the last time he held her. As she faded, he did not cry often, but when he did, he allowed it not as weakness, but as a gift, as proof that he was still human, still alive, and still grateful. Lick once asked him, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had killed him?" And Rain answered, "Yes, and it is why I never stop thanking the stars that we did not." Kale watched them both from a distance, sometimes not speaking, only smiling and thinking how strange it was that pain had brought them together, and peace had kept them close. And deep in the academy gardens, a tree grew taller than all the others planted by Kale. On the day he named himself, watered with care and sunlight, and watched over by. Under the tree, a stone rested smooth and quiet, with only 5 words carved into it. Not a name, not a title, only a truth: we began again with hope. And that was how the war ended, not with victory, but with vision. And that was how the legacy lived, not through monuments or laws, but through kindness, understanding, and the gentle voice of a child who saw what others could not. Kale never claimed to be a hero, and he never became a god, but in every heart he touched, he left a seed, and in every life that seed became a light. And across the stars, in places still wounded, still waking, the message continued, never shouted, always whispered, "We are not enemies, we are not broken, we are one life born from many." And the galaxy turned once more, not in fear, but in wonder.